All right, everybody. We are just going to start off by asking you to introduce yourself and say why you're running. We'll start with John on this one.
Good morning, John Campbell. I have been teaching in the classroom for 9 years, teaching science for those 9 years. And one of my biggest hurdles as a science teacher was the math skills and the reading skills of my students. I spent a lot of time working on basic math with my students, getting them caught up to the level they needed to be to learn science. And that took a lot of time away from teaching science, which was my passion. Students were hungry to learn science. Specifically, the science they loved was the ag science, learning how to calculate business models, learning how to calculate growth formulas of animals, how to calculate acreage and use GPS technology. But without those basic skills, a lot of them, it was completely foreign and they were already set up for not success. So that led me to want to be on the school board to help get those fundamental basic skills for the students. So when they took those higher level classes, science, algebra, they had that toolbox ready to take off and succeed and do well after high school, whether it was college or get into a career right after high school. So that's a little bit about me. Any questions that I can elaborate on?
Yeah, just wondering, are you teaching now and where are you teaching?
No, I'm not teaching right now. I live on a property here in Terrebonne and I raise animals and I do oddball jobs around my property, and for family, I help with their cattle ranch and I help with their farm, and that's a couple of different families there. So that keeps me busy helping out around the Terrebonne area here.
Great. Well, Liz, introduce yourself and let us know why you're running.
Thank you. And thank you, John, for joining me this morning. And thanks, Aaron and Nicole, for putting this together. My name is Liz Goodrich, and I am seeking a second term on the Redmond School Board because I believe improving outcomes for every student. And I believe passionately in public education. I come from a long family of public educators. My first job out of college, I taught high school English. So I too, like John, have experience in the classroom and understand that the deficiencies that are out there can only be mitigated through some really tough choices and some good solid work by the school board. I grew up in Bend. I went to Bend, graduated from Bend High School. My family has lived in Redmond since 1999. We raised both my husband, Pete, who's a military vet, and I raised our boys here. They both graduated from Redmond schools, had a great experience, but I know that's not the case for every student. And I'm committed to making sure that the kids leave our classrooms ready for paths beyond our schools, whatever that path may be. So thank you.
Yeah.
Liz, we'll go to the next question and we'll start with you this time. Liz, what is the role of a school board member?
Yeah, Aaron, that's a great question. And I think that there's a lot of misconception about role of school boards. We are governing bodies. We are not legislative bodies. So we don't pass laws, we don't make laws, but we manifest laws through our policies and budgets. So, I mean, the board has 4 basic duties. We hire and fire and supervise the superintendent. We approve the budget, we approve policy, and we approve curriculum. And those are very specific, yet in their specificity, they're pretty broad. So, that's the role of the school board, and it's a meaningful position. And it's been such an honor, and it's been a real learning opportunity. Public schools are complicated organizations, and the school board has a responsibility ultimately to make decisions about those 4 areas.
Thanks. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay, John, go ahead.
All right. So before I answer that question, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the first question. I was born in Redmond, grew up my entire life here in Central Oregon, did my student teaching here in Terrebonne, and formed a lot of lifelong relationships with community here. To answer the question about the school board, they have a commitment to the mission of the school. The school board members, they have a deep commitment to these values, which I do, and to the policies which we align to those values. Very important that I have the skill of strategic thinking. We need to be able to think strategically to understand the long term of the implications of the decisions that we make. We need to be able to collaborate between the school board members. We need to be able to effectively work out differences. We need to not set a bad example for the students. We need to make sure we're keeping the stakeholders in mind at every single choice we make. Communication. We need to be communicating effectively. We need to be giving feedback to people in the community for the decisions that we've made. And one of the most important things is ethical decisions. We need to be able to hold the highest standards and be able to conduct ourselves without any conflicts of interest. Knowledge of education policy is critical, which is one of the things that I can bring to the school board, is working with multiple school boards, having personal relationships with past school board members and previous superintendents as well. So making sure we're using the best practices available. Decision making. We need to be able to make informed decisions based on data, based on research, and also, most of all, community input, which is something that I strive to. I strive to talk to business owners, talk to community members, make myself available. I'm a part of Toastmasters. I go to the coffee clatters as much as I can to get upfront and personal with the community.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we also need to consider diversity, equity. We need to include everybody.
Okay, John, let's try to hold these. We've got a long list of questions. Let's try to hold these to under 2 minutes. But thank you.
All right, let's switch to another topic. We're going to start with John on this one. What's your take on book bans in schools?
Book bans in schools. What's an example of a book ban that you're referring to? What's one that's been banned?
I'm not referring to any that are that have been banned specifically in Redmond schools, but it's definitely a topic that is part of a national and local conversation. So we want to know your take.
Well, I want to lay out the basics: math, reading, science, and history. Those are some of the basics. If it's a book that doesn't have to do with those in the school, those need to be looked at very closely by the school board and make sure that it's representative of the community and the school as a whole, to make sure we're putting books in there that are educational purposes only, that help students enlighten themselves with what's going on around them, around our country, around our world. Banning the books specifically, it would have to be a very completely inappropriate book for me to want to ban that book.
Okay, Liz, what's your take on book bans in schools?
Well, just to clarify a little bit regarding book selection in school libraries, the school board does not get involved with that. That's an operational issue. And we actually have an administrative rule that outlines how our professional librarian selects materials for our libraries. And the board doesn't, if a parent or a community member objects to a book that's in our buildings, there is a process for reconsideration. But again, that doesn't ever come before the board. It currently is those reconsideration requests are considered by a committee that's made up of parents, educators, and administrators. I believe in the power of books. I believe that they are doors and windows into other people's lived experiences. And students in our schools, the variety, the diverse student body that comes to our buildings for education is wide, and they deserve to be represented in books on library shelves that are not, books in libraries are choices. They are not part of the curriculum. And I believe that students should have access to books that help them build empathy and understanding of other experiences out there. I think books are a powerful tool. And the book ban, or the challenges to books, the Redmond School District had its first challenge ever a couple of weeks ago. And it's antithetical to intellectual freedom. And I believe strongly in intellectual freedom, and removing access to materials just doesn't align with my values regarding intellectual freedom.
Thanks for that. You too.
John, I believe we're going to come to you first for this question.
No, I think we're at Liz Liz is first for this one.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Liz, do you believe history curriculum should tell the full history of the United States, including touching on topics such as slavery and Oregon's Black exclusion laws, for example?
Yes. I mean, I think history is an uncomfortable thing, but it's also full of beauty and hope and aspiration. And I think we can only do better if we understand where we may not have done as the best job we could have. And I think that students are hungry for the truth, and they're not. I just am so inspired by young people. They are not afraid of difficult conversations. They just need to have professional staff help them navigate and develop the critical thinking tools that they need to be able to evaluate. But unvarnished history isn't anything anybody should be afraid of. If we want to really embrace who we are as Americans, we have to understand the whole breadth, the good, the bad, and the beautiful about history.
All right, John, would you like a repeat of the question? We lost Aaron. Hopefully
Yeah,
we get him
let's have
back.
a repeat of the question, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you, let's see. Do you believe history curriculum should tell the full history of the United States, including touching on topics such as slavery and Oregon's Black exclusion laws as examples?
I believe that the education should absolutely teach the full history, the U.S. history, and also the world history about slavery and how it's still a part of our world today, unfortunately, and specifically teach about our U.S. Constitution and how it was formed by hundreds and hundreds of years of tyrannical governments throughout our world, and how our country worked very hard to improve life here in Northern America. Yeah, absolutely. All history needs to be available and taught in the classroom.
Thank you. Okay. I will start with John on this one. What's your perspective on sexual education in schools?
First of all, I believe it's the family's role to teach these private concepts to their children. In the public school, I believe starting around the high school age is an appropriate time to elaborate on those important topics that they've already been taught at home. There's a lot of distractions from education, from the basic math, reading, writing, and history. And we want to make sure we're focusing on those before they graduate, instead of cluttering and making distractions along the way.
All right. Liz, would you like a repeat?
No, I believe that age-appropriate, science-based health education is important for our students. We recently adopted a health curriculum called the Great Body Shop. And to John's point, it's a super interesting curriculum because every lesson has a take-home component to encourage dialogue between students and their families. And it's about wellness, it's about safety, and it is about bodies. And I think that our young people need to understand how to take care of themselves. I think waiting to high school to talk about healthy sex ed is too late. I think John and I would both agree that graduating from high school with a diploma is important. And there isn't anything that can derail a young person's path to a diploma faster than an unplanned pregnancy. So kids need to understand how their bodies work and how to keep on track to cross that finish line of graduation. So age appropriate components that get the kids talking to their parents and families about these issues, and science-based.
Excellent. Okay, Liz, right back at you with this next one. Let's see, where are we? If you were hiring a new superintendent today, what would you look for?
I hope we wouldn't have to hire a new superintendent.
These are obviously all of these are hypotheticals,
right. I mean, they
get a take on
superintendents are few and far between right now. So if I had to hire, I don't like hypotheticals, but somebody who understands public education, somebody who's grounded in the complex budget work that needs to happen to make our programs happen, a team builder and a good communicator, and somebody who's invested in the community, being out and about, being the public face of the district. And luckily, our current superintendent embodies all of those things.
Thank you. John.
The question was, what would I look for in a new superintendent?
If you were to be hiring a new superintendent today, what would you want to look for?
Well, I'm going to agree with Liz. We have a very professional superintendent whose number one goal is student education. But beside from that, if I was hiring one, I would look to our current superintendent for his skills, his background, and look for somebody very similar, somebody who really works hard with the school board and the administration and bridges those gaps and puts the students first.
Thank you. Aaron, you want to fire one or you want me to keep just rolling?
No, I can jump in.
Okay.
Sorry for getting disconnected there.
No worries.
John, I believe I'm coming to you with this one. If you received negative feedback regarding a superintendent, what should your approach be as a school board member? John, do you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, my approach would not to be to add to that negativity, not to stimulate it or to spread it to others. My goal would be to get down to the point, get down to the problem at the soonest convenience of the superintendent, meet with the superintendent and communicate these issues and try to come up with a problem that can solve it, and then go back to this community member and give a response and make the best of the situation that the superintendent and the school board has the power to do.
Great. Liz, do you need me to repeat the question?
No. The relationship between a school board and the superintendent is an interesting one, right? That person is our only employee. And so open lines of communication, critical. We also set goals every year for the superintendent and monitor those goals. And so when we get feedback from the community about the job that the superintendent is doing, it's critical to listen to our constituents, understand what their concerns and questions are, get information from the superintendent, and keep the eye on the goals that we've set for him. You know, it's a polarizing position as superintendent, especially recently. But we also have to, I think it's also the school board's job to advocate for our employee, unless, of course, it's something, you know, really egregious. You know, we are there to champion him so he is freed up to do the important work of leading the district. And not that we should ever shield him from public comment. He needs that feedback as well to perhaps improve and be aware of how he's being perceived in the public. But really, we are here to champion him and move him along so he can move the district along.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Liz, we'll start back with you with this one. Knowing that your job is to, you know, of course, evaluate the superintendent, how do you believe a school board member can best support the work of teachers and support staff?
Well, I think making sure that the superintendent is on track to meet the goals that we've set for him, because ultimately the goals trickle down into the classroom. I think supporting teachers starts with contract negotiations, hearing their concerns and issues about what's happening in the classroom, which are the issues now are many, impactful. So I think the teachers need to be part of the conversation, but really that conversation be, you know, if you look at the hierarchy of the organization, teachers should be in communication with their principals, should be in communication with the superintendent. And I think school boards can do a lot of setting a tone within a district. You know, if teachers know that the board members are looking out for them by looking out for the superintendent, being out in the schools, being visible. Every school board member adopts a couple of different schools every year. So we're out in the buildings interfacing in that positive way, and just keeping an eye on things. But really, school board members can support staff by being an open ear and supporting the superintendent as he does his work within the schools.
All right. John, would you like a repeat?
Thank you.
Yeah. How can you as a school board member best support the work of teachers and support staff?
By supporting the superintendent. That's what we hired him for. And that's what he's there for every day, day in and day out. By supporting the superintendent through speaking to community members, speaking to parents, and just supporting our superintendent. As Liz said, as long as it's nothing egregious is happening, we give our support. We made that decision to hire. We need to stand behind that employee, that head of the school district.
Thank you. All right, we're
Okay.
moving along.
John, I'm coming to John. I apologize for losing track of the flip-flop here, but John, I believe you're getting this question first. What is your take on the most effective means of protecting student and staff safety in school buildings? And as a second part to that question, do you support arming teachers?
First of all, a gun-free zone is dangerous, is very dangerous for our students and our staff. A quick little story back when I was teaching. We had a bucket, 5-gallon bucket. It was half full of used golf balls. That was the defense. And if we're fighting golf balls against golf balls, we have a fighting chance. So regards to safety, it needs to not be a gun-free zone. If that's a student, if that's a resource officer that's on the campus, that makes it not a gun-free zone. And the second part of your question, having staff armed, as long as they have as much training as a resource officer and regular training, I do not see a problem with having the staff, like I said, as long as they're as well trained as a resource officer, having them armed as well. That right there would save lots of tax dollar money, not having to have an additional employee that does one role. Saving money from our taxpayers is one of my campaign goals, is to make sure that everybody is aware of that. And I personally pay thousands of dollars to the school district, and I think that everybody in the Redmond School District feels similar, that they want to have the most efficient use of that dollar that they spend. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it looks like we are getting close to the end of time. So we still have time, of course, for Liz to answer the question. But the next one hopefully we can each answer in a minute's time, so we can just not have to redo this thing. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. We've done, I think I got the question. Thanks, Aaron. We've done a lot to improve safety in our buildings with the passing of the 2020 bond. Every school by the start of the school year next year will have a secure single entryway with new surveillance cameras and communications down to the police department. I believe in the SROs that are in our buildings. They do a fantastic job. They do more than just police the halls. They build relationships with students. I believe the work that they do is important. Do not believe in arming teachers. I don't think adding, I mean, there's just in my worldview, a teacher, I mean, a gun in a classroom could potentially have some very, very sad outcomes. And, you know, John, it was super interesting to hear you talk about, you know, taking time away from education when you're asking teachers now to perhaps go through the training that an SRO goes through to be a safe gun handler, gun owner. I think that just takes away the time that we so both passionately care about, educational minutes between teachers and students. So I believe in hardening our buildings on the outside, but guns, unless they're with the SRO, I don't think belong in school buildings, inside buildings.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to do a quick rebuttal
Sure.
on that.
Quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, quickly, no problem. So I want to make clear that it's not taking time away from the teachers. It's taking money away from the education of the students. Having an additional body in there that doesn't teach students reading, writing, math, and history, which is what we have them there for, not to build relationships.
Yeah, thank you.
Finally, this will be our last question. I think, where do we go? We're going to start with Liz on this one.
Yep.
And if you want to wrap into this, just like a little closing statement, that's great, 2 minutes each. What will you do if you receive difficult feedback from parents or community members?
Well, I have experienced this. We were on the receiving end of a lot of critical and hard feedback from our community. You know, it's important to listen to our constituents. It's also important to understand the role of the school board, the right and left margins of what we can and can't do within the law. So I value difficult feedback. It's how we get better. We have the way the board works. When we get difficult letters or when we get feedback from our community, the chair responds to those emails and letters. But I certainly listen to them all and internalize that and see if there is something that I can gain from understanding the critique and the feedback.
Thank you. John.
Yep, thank you. When I become school board member, we'll have surveys, we'll have feedback mechanisms. I want to have community members sharing their thoughts and their opinions related to our school district. I want to have community outreach. I want to have parent-teacher organizations, local business associations, social media. I want to be very transparent to the community members, not just the parents of the students, to let everybody know what's happening in our school, because they're all paying for it equally. Multilingual communication, really important to me, to make sure that all the languages are being addressed in our community. Look, most of all, we have a 6% proficiency rate in our math, and that is just simply what we need to focus on, is the basics.
Thanks so much. So it looks like we can take a minute each to just do a closing statement. I'll start with John.
Yep, I alluded to it just a moment ago. We are at a time, in my opinion, of crisis right now in our public schools. And in Redmond, it is really needing some leadership that will get us back to the basics, get rid of the distractions, get students ready for a career right out of high school, or get into a very good university of their choice. We can do this safely. We can do it responsibly. We can do it fiscally, economically as well, where we're not wasting a penny of the tax dollars' money, if not saving money. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. John, thanks for the conversation today. I appreciate it. So I'm running for a second term to improve outcomes for every student, create welcome and safe schools, and stand up for academic and intellectual freedom. You know, we're at a time of a great challenge for public schools, stable and adequate funding, the increasing number of high-need students in our buildings, and staffing shortages. But I intend to address those challenges with solutions that are rooted in that question of how will outcomes be improved for every student. And I believe so strongly in public education, and I'm a champion for public education, educators, and staff in our buildings. And I look forward to serving a second term. We have, as John said, we have a lot of work to do. We need to put politics aside and ideologies that don't belong in the boardroom. What does belong in the boardroom is the concern for improved outcomes for every student. So that's, thank you. I appreciate the time this morning.
Yeah, we really appreciate both of you spending time with us, sharing your ideas. It's so valuable for the community to get to just hear your ideas. So appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks,
both
Aaron.
for your time.
Thanks, John.
All right,
We
take care,
got it
everybody.
under the time limit. Yay for us.
Yep, we made it. We did it, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.